Hello and welcome to PT and Nutrition Education's e-learning platform. So now we should be at the stage where our program cards are complete, our 8-week program is in place, and we must ensure that the learner achievement portfolio has been fully completed up to this point. With the program overview, what we're doing now is providing a rationale or justification as to the exercises that you've chosen, the reps and set schemes, the particular training systems that you've put in place. Why have you included all of these things with regards to your client goals and what they hope to achieve out of their 8-week program? So without further ado, let's look specifically at some of the things that we require you to include in the program overview section of the Learner Achievement Portfolio. Okay, so as we've already stipulated on the previous slide, when it comes to the program overview, what we're trying to do here is provide a rationale and justification of the program you designed for your client. You're trying to prove to the reader and also the assessor that the 8-week program that you have designed is a highly efficient one and also one that will work based on peer-reviewed research. So if you've put a certain training strategy in place, a certain type of rep or set protocol, then we need to really providing some kind of research which backs your choice for this. Now, the good thing is that there is a plethora of research in things like the Journal of Sports Science and the Journal of Strength and Conditioning related to the goals of your client. I appreciate that the goals of the client may differ widely based on the person that you're working with, but there is going to be lots of evidence related to whatever your client's looking to do. So whether they're looking to reduce body fat or increase muscle mass or even indeed increase strength, there is a lot of research out there that you can find and you can implement in your program overview in order to provide a ample rationale and justification. What we recommend for the program overview is that you do this in an assignment format, so that you're writing this as if you were writing an assignment like you would do at college or university, so that it is of a level 3 standard, and again providing those references where we can refer to literature within the world of sports science, personal training, strength conditioning, which will relate to your 8-week program overview. So if we look more specifically at the program overview, we've got 3 key areas, or questions if you will, which need answering in order to satisfy all of the criteria when it comes to the PPO. So the first one is, how did the program link to the client goals? So now, of course, when you're providing a justification or rationale, of course, we're going to mention and refer to your program itself, because of course that's what you're justifying, but also specifically to the client goals. So as we've previously mentioned, whatever your client goals are or were, then you need to make sure that you are referring to these explicitly throughout your entire overview. So, for example, if we're talking about increasing strength, then why have the training principles that you've put forward going to help you achieve those particular goals? So if we look at the structure of the program overview, the first point may be provided with a paragraph or two, just introducing the program that you designed for your client, and then moving on to the client goals, and then how you expected to achieve that over the 8-week period. When we move on to point 2, this is where we start to get into the specifics of how we have designed the program based on the literature that we've read, and also the justifications that we give must be referenced within your work. So when we're talking about referencing, if you've been to university, you'll be well aware of a referencing system, but we've provided a whole host of different peer-related reviewed paper in the resources below this video. So please do feel free to look at the topics that we provided and whether or not they match your client goals and therefore your program overview. When we move on to point 2, now we're talking about the meat of the program overview, really. We're justifying the choices that we've made. So that when we talk about the choices made, we're talking about the exercise selection, the reps and sets protocol, the training system that you have in place, the rest periods, and also don't forget that one of your goals was related to the nutritional overview. So in the program overview, we have to provide the nutritional overview and also the fitness overview. So essentially, we are completing 2 separate bits of writing within the same assignment. Now, when it comes to these justifications, we have to use relevant research and literature. We've provided a whole host of literature, peer-reviewed literature, in the resources below, so please do feel free to have a look at some of those papers. You can read those papers at your own pleasure and also include them in your writing if you so wish as a reference point. But what we're making sure of is that what we've chosen and what we've designed has some kind of scientific backing, and therefore you are meeting the criteria demand for the learner achievement portfolio. Now, as a rule, there aren't any specific amount of justifications that we need to make, but generally, if we're providing at least 3 to 4 justifications for the fitness aspect of your training program and also 3 to 4 justifications for your nutrition, then we should be quite safe in achieving the full marks in your learner achievement portfolio. Just to give you a little bit more information, on point 2, we will be going into some of the specific questions that you can ask yourself relating to your program in the subsequent slide. And lastly, then, point 3, or section 3 of your program overview, if we're looking at this from a beginning, middle, and end type of perspective to your assignment, the last couple of paragraphs should be related to how you catered for the FIT principle. So, of course, this is frequency, intensity, time, and type over your 8-week training program. So, what we recommend here is that you give a subtitle to each one of those training principles. So we have frequency, and then you state over the 8-week program what you did to train in frequency and why in order to achieve your client goals. So what we'd expect to see is some kind of progressive overload with regards to those principles over that 8-week program. So this, of course, also applies to the intensity. So when we're talking about weight training, we're talking about rep max percentages. If we're talking about cardiovascular training, then we're talking about RPE scales or heart rate percentages. The timing of the training, so how long your training sessions lasted, and also the type of training. So did you switch from different training principles, for example, with the type of training? So did you go from one system to another? And if so, why? So again, just to repeat, if you provide a subtitle for each one of those training principles, then you should adequately answer this particular section of the program overview. And again, let's not forget progressive overload, specificity, and reversibility. So once more, we need to ensure that over the 8-week program that you are progressively making things harder, of course, in relation to your client and whether they can deal with that over a planned 8-week period. Are we ensuring that the specificity of training, so the type of training that we're doing, whether that's the exercises, the reps and the sets, the tempos, the rest periods, is all of that specific to the goals that you're trying to achieve? And of course, are you ensuring that your client isn't going backwards? So is that through your client not achieving enough training stimulus in order to make improvements, whether that be getting stronger or losing body fat? Or, of course, is this related to overtraining? There is a lot of research now related to overtraining or overreaching, and, of course, this might provide some literature-based findings, which you can, again, include into your program overview, and once again, make your program overview a stronger, justified rationale. Okay, so we hope then that this slide has at least provided you with an idea of the structure of your program overview, the 3 key areas which you must touch upon in order to meet the basic criteria demands within your learner achievement portfolio. We have also provided some student work of a previous PPO which was completed, and some of the key points that you may be able to take some ideas from and look at the structure of how this was set out in order to meet the marks available. What we'll do now on the next slide is we'll go into further detail relating to the justifications and some of the questions that you can ask yourself in order to achieve maximum marks for the PPO. Right, so let's delve into some of the key areas which you need to be touching upon in order to provide a thorough justification for your program overview. So these are just questions now that you can be asking yourself in order to ensure that you've met full marks in your learner achievement portfolio. So 4 key areas, which of course are included on your program cards, and that's the cardiovascular, the resistance training, the exercise or training system that you've chosen, and of course the nutritional aspect of your program. You should be touching upon all four aspects, of course, because they play a key role within your 8-week program for your clients. And again, the questions that we provided here are certainly not exhaustive. They're just to give you ideas for what you might be able to include when it comes to writing up your assignment. So there is lots of research related to interval training, specifically by a scientist called Martin Gabala, which you may wish to look into, relating to how a high-intensity interval session done over a much shorter period of time can elicit the same responses as a continuous aerobic training session done over a much longer period of time. So if we've got someone that's quite restricted on their time in the gym, then this might be a suitable training system which you can employ and therefore take care of your clients, specifically relating to some of the barriers that they may have. When we move on to the resistance training, we can see here, why did you plan those reps, sets, intensities and tempos during your program? So once again, you can allude to some of the training literature relating to whether it be hypertrophy training, strength training, endurance training, and again, relate that to the reps and the sets that you've set out. What are your rep max percentages when you come to do resistance training, and why? And again, you can relate to the plethora of research regarding hypertrophy, strength, or endurance training, specifically as well behind some of the interesting data related to hypertrophy recently by a scientist named Brad Schoenfeld, which you may wish to look into in order to justify your resistance training approaches. Then we move on to exercise training system or choice. So again, we've talked about some of the training systems that you can employ within your program cards and your program 8-week planning. So we've got here, why did you choose the exercises program? So what were some of the exercises that you chose? So if you chose a bench press, then why have you chosen that particular exercise relating to your client goals? It might be that they want specific chest development. It might be that you've chosen it as a compound exercise and therefore incorporates many different muscle groups and therefore can elicit a better fat loss response because you've got more musculature that's working. Again, there are many different types of justifications that you would give, and like I say, it is specific to your client and what they're looking to achieve. If we've chosen things like supersets where we go from one exercise to another, why is that? Is it because you're looking to overload the volume and therefore try to elicit a hypertrophic response? Because we've said before in previous lectures that we get a hypertrophic response based on 3 factors. So those 3 factors are related to time under tension, so the mechanical tension of the muscle; metabolic stress, whereby we upregulate some of the metabolites within the muscle, such as inorganic phosphate, AMP, lactate, hydrogen ions, and all of these have shown to provoke downstream events which can potentially lead to increased hypertrophic responses; and muscle damage. So negative training has proven to increase time under tension in the eccentric phase of the lift, and this can cause more micro tears in the muscle. And again, this might be another aspect of the training which you've incorporated in order to improve the hypertrophic response for your client. And then lastly, nutrition, which we expect to see as a separate part of the program overview. So here you're justifying your macronutrient prescriptions, your timings, and also your calories, all of which you should have identified within your program, but now you're justifying why you've chosen X amount of protein, why have you chosen X amount of carbohydrate, why are you spacing your protein feeds at 3 to 4 hour timings, why that amount of calories based on someone that's trying to reduce their overall body weight and their body fat percentages. So again, you're looking at the client, you're identifying what they're trying to achieve, and then you're identifying your prescriptions and justifying those accordingly. And then another question you can ask yourself relating to the nutrition is, how will these prescriptions contribute to your client goals? So if we've got, for example, 2 grams per kilo of body weight of protein ingested by your client every single day, then what is some of the research relating to that with regards to improving or at least maintaining muscle mass when that person might be in an energy deficit, for example? The permutations are endless, and of course, we're just providing you with some ideas of the things that you can include within your program overview. As we've said, and I'll say again, all of this is about your client and your client goals, and therefore you must adapt your rationale and your justifications relating to the client goals that were outset right from the very beginning of your learner achievement portfolio. But hopefully what this does provide are some ideas, again, of things that you can include when it comes to the rationale of your program overview. And as we say, 3 to 4 literature points for both the training and also for the nutritional aspect of your program should be sufficient with regards to achieving maximal marks for your program overview.